Welcome back, learner. Myself, Dr. Vinita Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, RGSC, Banaras Hindu University, with the course Rudimentary Principle and Practices of Managerial Economics, Module 8, Lecture number 39, with the topic Cost Analysis. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about cost function, cost output relationship, short run cost, in which we have discussed about the total cost. In today's lecture, we will be completing with the short run cost. Today we are going to discuss about average cost, marginal cost and the relationship between average and marginal cost. Average cost. Average cost is the per unit output of producing the commodity. That means average cost can be calculated from the total cost. Average cost can also be calculated from the fixed and the variable cost. That means average cost is also equal to average fixed cost and average variable cost. So, average cost basically means average cost is equal to total cost upon quantity. This is showing this formula. Second, average cost is equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. This formula is this one. And how we are going to calculate this average fixed cost? For this, you are going to divide total fixed cost upon quantity, and average variable cost is equal to total variable cost upon quantity. So, this the shape of the average cost is U-shaped, which means as you are going to increase the level of output, initially the average cost falls, reaches to its minimum point and thereafter start rising. That signifies that because of the economies of scale, why the average cost curve is of U-shaped in short run. It is because of economies of scale, basis of average fixed cost and average variable cost, basis of law of variable proportion and indivisibilities of the factors. That means as you are increasing the level of output because of law of variable proportion, economies of scale, indivisibility of the factors and average fixed cost and average variable cost, the average cost curve slopes downward, reaches to its minimum and thereafter increases. And we have already discussed about what do you mean by law of variable proportion, economies of scale, you know about. Because of these reason, the average cost curve is of U-shaped, which means average cost, increasing return, diminishing cost, decreasing return, increasing cost, constant return, constant cost. That means these are the three situations. So, average cost is the cost per unit of producing the commodity. The graph of the average cost curve is, this is your y-axis, this is your x-axis. Here you are going to show the output increasing. Here you are going to show the cost, that is the average cost. So initially, with the increase in level of output, your average cost will fall down. A time will come when it will reach to its minimum point. Thereafter, it start rising upward. So this is your average cost, which signifies this decreasing signifies increasing return, diminishing cost. This is constant return, constant cost. Thereafter, increasing cost, diminishing return. So, average cost is of U shape in short run. Why? Due to because of economies of scale. It is due to because of economies of scale, it slopes downward. At this point, economies of scale becomes equal to the diseconomies, and thereafter it start rising, because here your diseconomy is greater than your economies. As I told you people, that average cost can also be calculated by adding average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So in this we are going to discuss about average fixed cost. In the previous lecture we have discussed fixed cost remains constant irrespective to any level of output. But as you are going to increase the level of output, because this fixed cost remains constant, with every increase in unit of output, the per unit fixed cost will start diminishing. That is why average fixed cost fall from the initially and getting lower and lower. Signify with every increase in output, the per unit average fixed cost is getting reduced. And the shape of the average fixed cost is rectangular hyperbola. And it can be calculated with the help of formula. Average fixed cost is equal to total fixed cost divided by total quantity of output. That means in order to know average fixed cost, you have to divide total fixed cost by unit of output. So you will get average fixed cost. Average fixed cost can never be zero, because fixed cost remains constant and it will always be positive. The graph of average fixed cost. As you know, the fixed cost was like this. But as you are going to increase the output, the average fixed cost will reduce. So it will be like y-axis, x-axis, output. This is your average fixed cost, and it will like this, average fixed cost. It appears that it is going to touch the x-axis or the y-axis, but it will never touch any of the axes, because fixed cost can never be zero, because it remains constant. So average fixed cost can never be zero. Average variable cost. Average variable cost can be calculated by dividing the total variable cost upon quantity. So you can say that average variable cost is the per unit of variable cost of producing the unit. And this average variable cost is also of U-shaped. Why? Because with every increase in level of output, this average variable cost will fall, reaches to its minimum point, and thereafter it increases. So, the shape of average variable cost is U-shaped. Because why it is U-shaped? Because the average cost itself is of U-shape, and average variable cost is nothing but derived from the average cost itself. Average variable cost will be of U-shaped because it is the part of average cost. So, the graph of average variable cost will also be U-shaped. Y, X, here is average variable cost, here is output, this is the average variable cost, that is U-shaped. Why U-shaped? Initially you are increasing the output, your average variable cost will fall, reaches to its minimum point, and thereafter starts rising. And this is represented by this graph itself. So, this can be explained with the help of table as well. As you can see, your output is increasing from 0 to 7. Your fixed cost remains constant throughout the period, that is 50. Your total variable cost also increases with every increase in level of output, and your total cost is nothing but the combination of total fixed cost and total variable cost. This portion we have already discussed when we are discussing with the total cost of the short run. Today we are going to understand the relationship between the average cost, average fixed cost and average variable cost through table. As you are increasing the level of output, your average cost will reduce, reaches to its minimum point and thereafter increases. Your average fixed cost will continuously fall and it will keep on falling. It will always be positive. It can never be negative. And your average variable cost is also falling, reaching to its minimum point and thereafter increasing. That means if you are going to combine average fixed cost with the average variable cost, you will get the average cost. So, you can get the average cost from the average fixed cost plus average variable cost, or you can get the average cost from the total cost divided by quantity. But the point to note is that your average variable cost reaches to its minimum point at earlier, whereas your average cost reaches to its minimum point at a later. Why? Because average cost consists of both average fixed cost and average variable cost, whereas average variable cost consists of only variable factors, and that is why it reaches to its minimum point earlier in comparison to the average cost. So, this was the explanation about the table. You can go through it. Now, the graph of average cost, average fixed cost and average variable cost. As you know, this average cost is U-shaped. Average cost is U-shaped. You know, average fixed cost is like this, appear to touch but it will never touch. Average variable cost is also of U-shaped. So, if you are going to combine all these graphs together in a one graph, you will actually know the cost of average cost of producing the commodity. So, this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, here is the output, that signifies with every increase in level of output what will be the cost, and here you are representing the average cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost. Your average fixed cost is like this. Your average variable cost is also U-shape, it will be like this, and your average cost is also U-shape, it will be like this. I just want to tell you that your average fixed cost will be lower than average cost and average variable cost. Your average variable cost will be lower than the average cost, and your average cost will be at its high point. Why high point? Because your average cost is equal to average variable cost plus average fixed cost. That is why if you are going to add this, then you are going to add this, so definitely you will get this. The same thing is explained with the help of the diagram here. Representing this is the average fixed cost, this is average variable cost, and this is average cost. Marginal cost. Marginal cost is the addition made to the total cost by producing extra unit. That means if you are going to increase one level of output, what is the additional cost you will be incurring to produce it? That means it is the addition made to the total cost by producing one more unit of output, and that is known as marginal cost. So, marginal cost can be calculated from the total cost. So, marginal cost of n unit is equal to total cost of nth unit minus total cost of n minus 1 unit. This is the formula. Your marginal cost is also of U-shaped, which means as you are going to increase the level of output, your marginal cost will fall down, reaches to its minimum, and then start rising upward. Why? Due to because of presence of economies, it is reducing, reaching to its minimum, and thereafter increasing due to because of diseconomies. This can also be represented with the help of table, in which you can see your output is increasing from 1 to 7, your fixed cost remains constant, your variable cost is increasing for every level of output, and your total cost is also increasing. So, this is the fact you are already aware about it. We are going to discuss about the marginal cost. Marginal cost says that total cost of n unit minus total cost of n minus 1 unit. So, this 50 is above is nothing. So, 90 minus 50 will give you 40, 110 minus 90, 20, 125 minus 110, 15, 150, 5 minus 25, 30, 195 minus 155, 40, 245 minus 195, 50, 305 minus 245. That means for every additional unit, what extra cost you are incurring for producing one more level of output, this is known as marginal cost. So, you can say that Marginal cost is not related with the fixed cost because fixed cost remains constant. So, marginal cost is affected by the variable cost. So, you can see that marginal cost is reducing, reaching to its minimum point and thereafter increasing. This is the explanation what I have told you people just right now. And the cost, as I already told you people, that marginal cost is of U shape. Why U shape? Because initially with increase in level of output, you will have a increasing return and diminishing cost. Then constant return and constant cost. Thereafter diminishing return and increasing cost. That is why your marginal cost is of U-shaped. The relationship between average and marginal cost is very important. This can be explained with the help of a diagram. Y, 0, X, this is the cost, that basically average cost and marginal cost, and here you are showing the output. This is your marginal cost. So, this is the graph representing the relationship between average cost and the marginal cost. Important point is that you know that average cost and marginal cost can be calculated from the total cost. Everybody know? You know that average cost is equal to total cost upon quantity, whereas marginal cost is equal to total cost of n unit minus total cost of n minus 1 unit. That means both average and marginal cost can be calculated from the total cost. This is the first relationship between the average and marginal cost. That means both can be calculated from the total cost, where average cost is equal to total cost upon quantity and marginal cost is equal to total cost of n unit minus total cost n minus 1 unit. As you can see from the graph, you know that when average cost falls, marginal cost will also falls, but at a greater speed. AC is falling, MC will also fall, but at a greater speed, and that is why at this point marginal cost will below the average cost. So, you can see that when this average cost was falling, marginal cost was also falling, but your marginal cost is below the average cost. Why this? Because your average cost consists of average fixed cost plus average variable cost, whereas your marginal cost consists of only average variable cost. And this is explained with the help of this point. When AC falls, MC also falls, but at a greater speed, because marginal cost refers only to change in average variable cost, whereas your average cost is the aggregation of both average fixed cost and average variable cost. When average cost rises, marginal cost will also rise, but at a greater speed. The same thing, because average cost consists of average fixed cost plus average variable cost, whereas your marginal cost consists of only average variable cost. So, when AC is rising, MC will also rise but at a greater speed. That is why marginal cost will always be above average cost. And this is the third relationship, which is showing when average cost rises, marginal cost also rise, because marginal cost refers only to change in average variable cost, whereas average cost is the aggregation of average fixed cost and average variable cost. Next point, your marginal cost will cut average cost at its lowest point, because marginal cost reaches to its minimum point before the average cost. So marginal cost will cut the average cost at its lowest point. That means when MC is cutting this AC here, it is cutting AC, that means at this point average cost is at its minimum point, where marginal cost is cutting and rising upward. This is this point, MC cuts AC at its lowest point. Next point, when AC is constant, MC will become equal to AC. That means when AC is constant, MC will follow the trend and become equal and constant to the average cost. And this is this point. Next point, role of marginal cost and average cost in price determination. Marginal cost and average cost is very important in deciding the price for the commodity. When we are going to this point, we will be discussing in detail in our coming classes, when we will be discussing about the different forms of the market. Mutual interaction between MC and AC. When marginal cost is more than average cost, it pulls upward. When marginal cost is less than average cost, the average cost pulls downward. And when marginal cost gets equal to average cost and becomes constant. That means these two are closely related to each other. Marginal cost will follow the trend of the average cost, because both marginal cost and average cost is calculated from the total cost, and in total cost you have fixed cost and variable cost. So marginal cost consists only the proportion of the average variable cost, whereas average cost consists the proportion of average fixed cost and average variable cost. That is why whatsoever is the trend average cost is following, the marginal cost will also follow the same trend, but the speed in the marginal cost will be at a greater, because it does not have the proportion of the fixed factor in it. So this relation is showing the relationship between the marginal cost and the average cost. So thank you for today's session. In today's session, we have completed with the cost and output relationship of the short run. Today we have discussed about the other two costs of the short run, that is the average cost and the marginal cost. And we have discussed about the relationship between the average cost and the marginal cost. They have a close relationship. So thank you for today's session. Hope you have understand the concept of the short run cost curve. We will be meeting again for the next lecture, talking about the long run cost curve. Thank you.